you asking why we were doing it?
They're all right in front of you.
Oh, okay.
Like, so if we could,
Brought them all up, there was a bunch of them there, so I said, I'll bring them up.
auto filter.
Yes,
all
we can
towns.
do, I can do, I actually just got a login last week, so I can do that for any town that's in E-code across the country.
Oh, all right, nice.
Yeah.
George ran into you last time.
I gave you a list of, I
No.
think
Yeah,
we
no,
gave you a
that's-
list of
that's
towns just
correct.
in the state that I was able to
That's-
get a hold of
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
quickly.
No,
But
it
we
happens.
could do that for cross country.
That's one of the questions on the routine review.
Yeah, yep, yep, I have a multi-town login or whatever it is that they gave me so I can get in, yeah.
Is it because of you? Could we get some?
You guys probably could too, but I know that I was able to get
Anybody
it.
know
They
what's
just
going on
sent
with
it over
USA
because we
trash?
work with so many towns that are, yeah.
What do I know? USA bought out Paynes.
When did they, yeah, but why didn't they pick up the trash today?
Who knows?
That's the thing on
They got
Facebook,
one whole side of our street,
You're kidding.
they didn't even pick it up, so I didn't know, maybe.
there's a thing on Facebook
Maybe
today
I
about
missed it.
getting it out before 6 AM because the routes are being redone.
Oh,
So maybe you're not being picked up on
Yeah,
one side
'cause
because the
usually
route.
they don't get me till like 1 o'clock.
Yeah. Out there, because USA bought out Paynes and like last week, they didn't pick up my whole street. There was either a new driver or something from Paynes.
I figured it
They
was.
didn't do the whole streets, and I called, so my neighbors called. They said, well, we'll get it next week, and a couple of them said, no, you'll get it this week. So
They will.
they picked it up the next day,
They always do.
finally,
So
what
we
they
gotta-
did,
we gotta
was
get that
solve
out.
them, yeah. But they did. Everybody all set? Yep. 7 PM. I'll call our regular meeting of the Winchester Planning and Zoning Commission for March 24th to order. Present, Jeremy DeCarli, Joffrey Green, Adam Quagliaroli, Charlene LaVoy's absent excused, John Cooney's present, myself, Peter Marsh is present, George Clausen's absent excused, Will Platt is present, Krista Malenka, and Scott Oixler are present. No public comment, we have no public here. Agenda review, does anyone have anything for agenda review?
No, the one thing that I will mention is, and I don't know if anybody noticed it when the agendas went out on Friday, but we included live links in the agenda so that each of the item numbers on there, the application numbers, you can click on, it'll bring you right into OpenGov so that
Okay.
you can pull up your documents online.
Very good.
What we'd like to do is start moving towards using less paper and getting you guys acclimated to viewing some of this stuff online. We're not gonna do that to you immediately, don't worry, but we wanna try to start moving in that direction, cause we're killing a lot of trees.
Yeah.
So, and we do have the availability to do most of the stuff on the internet these days.
And that's good for the public also, so
Right.
if they wanna see that.
Yep.
Okay. Public hearings, there are none scheduled for tonight. Item 5, old business. A, PCC 25-1, zoning regulation change application, Town of Winchester, Connecticut, proposal modification to 4D, cannabis to remove a 200-foot prohibition related to certain sensitive sites and citing cannabis establishments.
I think we just table that, right?
Yeah, you have a public hearing, I just left these items,
Yeah,
if the
public
next three
hearings.
are all on there for.
Yeah, the public hearing is scheduled for April 14th, 2025, at 7 PM. I just didn't know if there was any discussion on that, anybody had any changes to things to what we had discussed?
No updates on our end.
No? Okay. B, PCC 25-2, zoning regulation change, proposal e-codification of current subdivision regulations, public hearing scheduled for April 14th, 2025.
The only thing that we would mention is those few changes that came up at the last meeting when Claudia attended were made. I think there was a parking regulation having to do with marinas. I think that might be the only thing, so that's in the
Yes,
latest.
I think, yes, I
Yeah.
saw the notes for that,
Yep.
that put the parking, it would be part of our site plan.
Correct.
Driveways too, right?
What's that?
The driveways as well was included.
So the new drive, yes, that's,
Yeah.
And,
yes.
yeah, the new driveway
Yeah.
or-
That's in there.
regulation would be included also. C, PZC 25-3, zoning regulation change, proposal e-codification of current zoning regulations, including any amendments since adoption. That public hearing is also scheduled for April 14th, 2025. I don't think we had anything there, so.
No.
Much discussing. Okay, item 6, PZC 25-4, earth excavation permit renewal, applicant Pierto.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
sorry to go back, but in 5A, for the 200-foot prohibition,
Yep.
you also mentioned consideration for limiting the number of retail. Is that inclusive to that public hearing, or is that something separate?
That was not included
Okay.
in this language, but it's certainly something that we can take on at a later date. We did verify
We had
that
discussed
we
it,
can
and
set a cap.
one of the things we did not know is if the state, with their licensing, because of their licensing, if they limit it to so many per town or
Yeah.
not. I'm not sure.
The original legislation did, it was 1 per 25,000 per capita.
Okay.
But they eliminated that in 2022.
Completely.
So there is no, that's correct. But
No,
my
it-
understanding is that the
it's-
towns could limit, and Rista may know better than I do, but I'm pretty sure that the towns could put a limit on it if they wanted to.
Yeah, I would have to look to verify that,
Yeah,
but.
I dug through the statutes the other day, and it's silent on that, right?
Yes.
It doesn't tell you you can't. It doesn't tell you you can either.
I read something a little bit different, and I wrote it down here. It's that up to June 30th, 2024, they limit it to 1 per 25,000.
Right.
And then there's a subsection F that allows the commission, or requires commission of consumer protection to set the limit, based on, the municipality. So we could set I do believe we could set a limit,
Yes.
but then it might be less restrictive than the state of Connecticut, or the consumer protection. So if someone wanted to go for a license, let's say we got one retailer, and we had a limit of 2, and then someone submitted for a license for a second one, well, then it would go to the Consumer Protection Commission. The commission would grant it, or decide to grant it or not to grant it.
Okay.
And
Oh.
it's,
Okay.
and they say it's based on the accessibility of, of that product to the residents. So I'd say the establishment on our border with Torrington would potentially affect that. So they may say that, well, those residents have access to it, in Torrington right
Right.
there.
Because it's on the town line.
Yep. That's the way I read. I didn't before that language.
Yeah, and
where
I think
saw
that so to give you an idea of like what I think you're talking about, back when the licenses came out for retail, at the very beginning, the city of Torrington awarded 5 permits, said we licensed 5 places that it could be, but the state only gave 1 license. So even though 5 are licensed, 4 people, like the state was saying, we're only giving 1.
Yeah.
And they picked the one they liked the best and awarded it, even though the city approved more. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I do believe we can limit it, but it's up to them whether we're actually going to get to that.
Right, whether or not
Yeah.
they actually get the license,
Yep.
right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So the one thing, and one thing I'll say is, and I've said this in other communities that I've worked to, is that I would, if the commission wants to limit the number in town, I'm not gonna stop you from doing that, but I think the market's gonna do that for you. So it may be wasted effort to kind of try to go through that exercise of, well, do we want 1? Do we want 2? Do we want 5? The market is what it is. You don't have one yet, although I think there's one that's interested. But we've had this legislation now for going on 5 years, and this is the first one, and we've got a neighboring town with it. So I think the market's gonna take care of that for you.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, it seems to in Massachusetts too, because you see them closing up and,
Right.
and having financial difficulties. I know Great Barrington, as I mentioned last meeting, you go by there on a Sunday and you don't see the traffic that there used to be
Right.
at all.
It's just like when Krispy Kreme came to the
Yeah,
Northeast,
exactly.
right? And they were lines
were
all over the place, and
lined
now
up-
they're gone.
Lined
So-
up beyond the DOT headquarters. I used to look
That's
out of
right.
my office and watch them constantly. Yeah. That they did. Okay. We'll move on to new business, PZC 25-4, earth excavation permit, Pierre Talo Lacherio, location 182 Torrington Road, property ID 039158-019B, proposal renewal of earth excavation permit, originally issued for 11/1979, for up to 500,000 cubic yards of material. We have an updated zoning map, and, no, that's another item. Okay, go ahead. We've got correspondence from
Yeah, so we do have, we have an updated topographical map as required. This is a 2-year update request for this excavation operation down on Torrington Road. I guess, let's see the applicant here. So I think what we do at this point is accept the application and continue it to your next meeting. You could set a public hearing. It's gonna require a public hearing because it's a special permit, but without the applicant here, I'm hesitant to tell you to set a public hearing for it.
Well, I think if we do, maybe we do it at our second meeting in April, just because we've got so much on the 14th,
I think that'd be fine,
you
yeah.
know, myself.
I have a question.
Yes.
On the last page, I'm sorry, page 3, I guess it is the last page. This is project information. It says that property's got city sewer and city water. I don't think it does.
I don't think that's true down there, is it?
No,
No,
water only goes as far as DOT.
Yeah.
yeah. So those are check boxes that the applicant enters when they're putting in their application
Right.
online, so that, you know, whoever was entering in the information, just put it in wrong, but we'll address that.
So do we want to set a public hearing for April 28th?
28th, I would say. Okay, I'll make a motion to accept PZC 25-4 earth excavation permit renewal and schedule a public hearing for April 28th.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, Rista, I'm sorry, I should seat you in George's place. I forgot to do that at the beginning.
Okay.
Okay. Totally forgot that, sorry. Okay, item B, discussion, updated zoning map.
So I did, this is something that Jeff and I have been working on since I got here. I did, you should be able to see it on that screen too, and I'll get it, I'll drill in there a little bit closer. We started talking about this, I think, before I really even started working in the town. That the zoning map had not been officially updated and readopted since 2017. Some changes have been made. Some of your parcels were updated, or some of the zones were updated on the GIS system, but none had never been made official. The commission hasn't taken any action, so we want to go through that exercise. There were a couple of parcels that have been changed in the last few years that weren't updated, either in your GIS or in the system that we have in the town, and that's over here on the lake. It is the parcel that the marina recently purchased.
Right, since we're there, you see where you have that yellow stripe going through that?
Yep.
So, is this GIS map accurate as far as boundaries go? Because we were led to believe that that orange piece butted HLB zone. And this map shows, obviously it's not. So there's an error in the map. So it can, because of it's being an HLB zone, we need to see what that property encompasses.
So
If you zoom in on it, if you got the lines there,
I do, and I can make them.
no, you don't have the lines.
Well, I can, they're there, they're just really, they're really grayed out. That access strip is showing currently, so what I will say is that I got the parcel map from your GIS provider, Timmins. And I don't know whether or not there's been a boundary line adjustment there or not. We'll have to find that out.
On the boundary lines that are there, show that.
Yes, the current,
show this here being owned by the property over here.
that's correct. That's how the boundary lines in the parcel map currently show it, which is
can
why I drew it the way I did, because,
So can that be corrected?
well, I need to verify that that access strip,
Well, it's that,
Has been.
it's that, and I believe it's these properties, these houses that are right here.
right, so we'll,
So,
if those maps have been filed in the clerk's office, then I can change the parcel map.
well, they were in the application too.
Okay.
Or something was in the
Okay,
application.
so we'll check into that.
Because that needs to be corrected.
Okay. Okay, so we'll check that. That's why we're doing this exercise, so we can pick up on all of these things. The other thing that came up pretty quickly was that the former KFC, and I forgot what's down there now, but
Yeah, the cement company.
That was in, I think it was in town single family, when in reality, it's in town gateway, yeah. So I fixed that parcel as well.
They're showing it in Town Gateway.
That's currently, yeah, so the newer draft map is showing as town gateway. The rest of the map actually was in pretty good shape. There was a whole bunch of changes that were made up on the north end of town a few years ago that hadn't been incorporated into your official map, but we have those as town single family.
Yeah, those are all along
in the
Walnut
zone.
Street.
That's right, yeah.
All
there's-
that area, those were
Yeah,
changed,
all
those are in the
roads.
list we got.
Yep, so I gave you the list. And those are really the big changes. The one thing that we've talked a little bit about internally is a couple of lots that when you look at their location and you look at the layout and the configuration, it might make sense for them to live in a neighboring zone. So, for example, if I run over here, we've got, these streets in this area. If you look at the size of these lots, and I can probably make those darker if well, you can see the parcel lines there, I think. But these lots are all, I mean, they're all small, and they're all configured, and they're all single-family lots. And so I just wonder if these should go from rural residential over to town single-family, where the lot sizes make them, in other words, make them less non-conforming. These small lots are non-conforming in the rural residential zone, where, I mean, they were developed with all those other lots that are next door, which are all town single-family. So I just, we don't have to have that answer tonight, but I think it's something to ponder and something to think about.
What's that big lot, that, like?
This one
Yeah.
here, that's a manufacturing facility of some kind, and I'd have to pull up, I don't,
What street's that on?
this is Old New Hartford
Oh,
here.
Hartford, okay,
Yeah.
that belongs to Rhodes. That used to be an old screw machine factory.
Okay.
In that property, there was access to a lot on
Yeah, I
Oakdale
think that-
Avenue to that property too, but there is, I think, a house on it also.
And I
Goes
think
down
they
the
do
road.
have a driveway on the Old New
There-
Hartford
there's a
Road side
driveway
too.
both- Yes, there is, going to the house.
So it might, and again, it really depends on what the town wants longevity for that, that parcel to become.
Yeah,
But
but
if
there
it's
is a
a
factory building on it.
There's a factory
It's
building
not
on
active,
it.
but it's used for storage, I
Right.
believe.
And what's the pink?
So the pink is Town Gateway.
Jeff, 86 Strong Terrace. I don't see that on this list that it was changed.
Change to,
We had that discussion where it showed in the Town Gateway along White, because it fronted Whiting Street also. And looking at this list, it lists a bunch on Strong Terrace that were changed back in 2020,
Okay.
but not 86. So that may need further research.
Let me pull up the existing.
So, just before you get off of the screen, I think it makes sense to change that, to make the lots more conforming, and maybe the factory building becomes Gateway, and the other small lots become
Town single
town
family.
center, right? And so, I think that makes sense. I don't know what any of the other commissioners think, but I'm always in favor of trying to make things more conforming than continuing to make more non-conformities, so that seems to make sense to me.
Okay. And that was my argument, and I think I put it in the report that you got on Friday too, is that the manufacturing lot should probably be Town Gateway because of its historic use. I don't know what the history of that property it is, but if it runs into a situation down the line, if it's been historically manufacturing, there might be some
Manufacturing with a residence
contamination
also on
out
the
there,
same
you may never
parcel,
make that
yes.
residential,
I
right?
agree.
And you do have Town Gateway right across the street, so it's not a stretch to make that Town Gateway.
Yeah, it is served by water and sewer, and it borders the regional.
Right,
you know,
right. And then the other lots that are on Central and Palmer Avenue
Yeah, I
probably
agree,
should be
those should
town
all be,
single family. Okay.
town, single family,
Okay.
definitely.
So if the
think so.
commission's more or less consensus, then we can make that change, list them out, and have that as part of the public hearing. Okay. The other one, while we're in that neighborhood, and then I'll go check Strong Terrace, but since we're in this part of town looking at it, the other one that is kind of funny to me, and I don't remember who I talked to about it, but we've got one single-family home hanging out here by itself in Town Gateway at the end of Old New Hartford Road. and I'm not quite sure why.
Yeah, that
Why
was
that
a
got left out.
clerical error when we did the zoning change.
Okay.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so we'll add that to the list as well, and I think that's in my report to you as well, so we'll
And
pull
what
that
is
over.
on that now?
It's a single-family home,
Yeah, there's a single family.
surrounded by other single-family homes. So, okay, so it was just a clerical error and it got dropped
The
off the
interesting
list.
part is, this house doesn't own this property here.
Right,
So that's town gateway, and it looks like there's a piece of right of way or something that comes up here that would be separating it out.
right.
It's got a steep back there to do anything with from 44.
It's not, it's nothing to be developed.
Okay, so we'll address those. And what did you say, Peter, 85 or 86?
86 it was,
86.
yes. Because the back edge of the lot actually fronts Whiting Street.
Yeah, so it's showing as town single-family.
It is, okay.
Yeah, and that's what it should be?
Yes, I would say
Okay.
so. I mean, that's what Strong Terrace should be, anything
Okay.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just gotta double check, check on that, make sure
Yeah,
there's,
so
there
this-
is one lot, it looked like that was on Strong Terrace, that also is in the gateway.
Yeah, so those last two, and those have, those two parcels there have Whiting Street addresses.
Okay,
Yeah, so
that's good.
this is,
Yeah.
38 and 42 Whiting, this
Those are
here is
Whiting Street
86
addresses.
Strong.
Okay.
Yep,
that's fine.
okay.
Yeah, the rest of them look good, I
I
think.
think that's all I had. My other, and this is really kind of a, when I first looked at your zoning map, when I was getting ready to work here, I looked at your lake zone and I thought, wow, it's all commercial all around the lake, which didn't make a lot of sense to me. And your color scheme is, I will say, not the standard traditional color scheme. And so what I'd like us to do is move towards a more traditional coloring system, which is typically shades of yellow for residential, shades of red for commercial, and shades of pinks and purples for industrial. And so that's what I've done here. I mean, if you all are used to your colors and you like the way it is, that's fine. I'm not gonna force you to do anything, but I just think that this is the coloring scheme that most of the rest of the state and country, quite frankly, is using.
Easier to define
Right,
because of the contrast between them.
right,
Yeah.
right.
You had, not to go back to the list, but you had
Sure.
Winchester Road and Overlook Road here on your list of ones to change from Highland Lake District to Town Single Family.
Oh, I did have those.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. And that was a conversation that thank you for bringing that up. That was a conversation.
I just didn't
that-
wanna let it slip by.
Yeah, Jeff and I had
Address.
talked a little bit about that. So, right, that neighborhood up there is your town single family on one side and Highland Lake on the other side. They are very much defined by Overlook Road, which is not lakefront. And, so I just, again, I look at that and I think it may make sense for them to be town single family as opposed to Highland Lake District. They're not on the lake, they're not impacted. I mean, they're in the watershed, but they don't have those standard issues that all those lakefront properties do.
I live
so-
on Sucker Brook and I'm in the watershed, so.
Right,
about a half
exactly.
mile,
Right,
quarter
the
mile away
watershed's
from
huge,
the lake,
right.
but I agree, I think they should be in.
Does that make it more conforming as well?
Yeah, it would, yeah.
Where do you stop as you go down that?
I would stop at,
So Overlook Dead Ends.
yeah, right here.
Road that ends there, yes.
Yeah, there's three little lots that, I don't know how those gain access, actually,
to get
maybe through here, I'm not sure. But I would pick up those three lots and these overlook lots here and leave everything else just as it is.
What about the lots on 263?
The which one now?
Up further,
On Winchester.
right up in, what about those house lots in there?
These here?
Yeah.
Or all of them? Yeah, you could pick them all up. I mean, I would, you have the local knowledge out there better than I
Yeah,
do. But sure, we
definitely.
can pick all those
I
up,
mean, they've
yeah.
got no access to the lake.
Thing about
Right,
them
so-
is they all are drainage into the lake.
Right. So,
That this is from the road down, it's all downhill. All that water from up there drains down,
right.
so. They're all fully developed.
So for instance, we've got I forget the address because I issued the zoning violation last year, but somebody put a deck on their house without a permit, that's one problem. But the reason they did it is because we kept telling him, sorry, but you're in the Highland Lake District, so you need to meet these setbacks, which was a big ask for him, and he decided to ignore it altogether, and now he has a zoning violation.
Second,
But if
second lot coming
Second or
down.
third, yeah.
Second
If
one
we
down.
change the zoning, would it be permissible?
That was my next question to you. Would I be able to repeal the violation, or he was in violation at the time? How do we deal with that?
I think you could repeal the violation, because if the violation is tied to the zone in which the house is, or which the
Okay.
property is,
Yeah.
once the zone is changed, if it's conforming, then,
Worked itself
yeah,
out.
yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
But would it be conforming if it was? If it was town
Well,
single family?
I'd have to,
Yeah.
I don't remember
Okay,
the
we'd
exact
have to look.
measurements, but,
Mhm.
yeah.
So I think that makes sense too.
Okay.
But I think, yeah, it should be town single family. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Be careful when you get down a little farther, because one of those houses that are on, most of these that are up on 263 come down to the lake.
Those should stay.
Yes, those should
Yeah.
stay, yeah.
If
I
they don't
agree.
have
Right.
lake access.
Right. No, it would really be, and I know, and I apologize, I know these lines are hard to see, but,
Yeah. I think that's the last one.
there's, 1, 2, and there's a large lot here, but it doesn't reach all the way down to the lake. So I think it would be those 3 in addition to those,
Just along the road, basically,
just along
road frontage.
yeah.
Right.
So what do you want to make the edits to the map and bring it back to us
Yeah.
before we set the public hearing?
I think so. Yeah, you have a whole bunch of public hearings scheduled for April anyway, so let's make the edits. I'll highlight them a little bit better on the map so you can
Yeah,
see.
we could talk about that at our 14th, April
Yep.
14th meeting, and possibly set the public hearing for the 28th.
Yep.
So I
for
think
this.
we would have to set it for probably the second meeting in May.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, because
Yeah,
we've got
I
to
would say
we've
so.
got to
It's a
do
busy time.
we've got to do a bunch of referrals too because
Yeah.
it's your zoning map.
Yeah.
So
Does this have to go to the COG at all?
yeah,
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 that's what I thought it did.
yeah.
Did we get an answer on the colors?
I think so. Yeah. How do you feel about the color scheme aspect of it?
I'm okay with it, yeah.
Okay.
Going to the standardized.
As long as if it's standardized, what difference does it make to us?
Right.
I don't
We
know.
just didn't know if there was a
How
reason
often
for
do-
this.
How often do we actually see the map? You know, it comes
True.
in with an application, and we look at it, we look at the parcels, but it's not like we're dealing with it every day. I mean, you're dealing with it every day, probably.
But it'll make it easier for
Colors
you.
don't make a difference to me. So.
No, but
But it's I think of the outside.
you gotta be retrained though.
You know, I think about the developers and folks coming into town. And, you know, I'll use myself as an example. Like I said, I looked at your map and thought, why is the lake fully commercial? You know, because it was bright red on the map, and you know, we just associate that with
And that
commercial
was
zoning.
the town planner at the time.
Well, you know, and that
Basically,
it happens.
That's what was
So-
presented to us, and
Right.
we accepted it, so.
Okay, so as long as there's no sentimental feelings about your
No,
color
I-
scheme on your zoning map, then we'll.
And that's nothing we have to have a hearing on or anything, that's just.
No, well, I mean, it would just be part of the map update altogether.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
If you guys have any other properties that come to mind, just send them our way,
Yeah.
and we could look at it and institute them for
I can't.
discussion.
I can't think of any. We've been through this how many times in the past that
Yeah.
it's crazy. Yep. But that looks good, thank you.
Thank you.
We beat that one to death. Discussion, interpretation of impervious surface definition. And we will leave here tonight by 9 o'clock. Before we start this discussion.
It doesn't have to be, I don't think it has to be a very deep discussion, but just, you know, initially I wanted to bring it up. It's something we've talked about internally. And it sounds like this has gone back and forth a couple of different times.
There's been a few meetings on it,
Okay.
meetings
A
with
few
all the
hundred.
board members.
A few
all the
hundred.
boards
Summit.
here.
Yes,
The summit meeting over,
Yes.
how do you,
especially your
Define this and
descriptions of
apply
gravel, you know, is it rounded gravel, is it crushed stone?
Well, that's just it,
Yeah,
and how
is
it's
it
used.
Compacted, is it, yes,
And I think it comes back to what your definition says. And if we need to change your definition, then we need to change your definition. To me, I mean, the way, and I think I spelled it out in that memo that I
Yes.
gave you. I tried to kind of get my thoughts clear before I put that thing out there,
Oh.
but it's very clear that gravel in a driveway is impervious.
yes.
I agree with that in practice and in theory. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think what's happening to some extent, and I don't know that it's you, I think it's happening at wetlands more than anything else, even though they don't really have jurisdiction over the impervious coverage number. But I think when it comes in at the staff level and we're doing a review, and the Wetlands Commission is doing a review, they're looking at gravel sort of anywhere on the lot as impervious. And I think that's the wrong way to go about it, because there's a lot of engineers out there, and there are a lot of treatment methods that involve clean gravel, not processed gravel. Processed gravel is totally
Right.
different. That's got sand mixed in, and that's intended to be hard as a rock. But clean stone and clean gravel on walkways, on steps going down to the lake in those areas where you've got them, and even in landscaped areas, sorry. It's just an alarm to remind myself to give my dog her pill. Those areas, a lot of times you'll put down clean stone in an effort to slow the water and get it to infiltrate into the ground. Infiltration galleries that people are putting in their yards to deal with the rainwater off from their roof have gravel in them because it helps to disperse and infiltrate the water. And so I want to make sure that we're not taking landscaped areas, maybe it's somebody's garden bed that they have. And we had an example that came up at Wetlands last week where, or actually I think it was an applicant that's come in, but they have a 10-foot strip out on the lake side of their property that's all clean stone, and it was asked for by the Wetlands Commission, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, as an infiltration strip.
Right,
To
to
get the-
filter
to
the
get
water
the
before
water
it hits
in, right.
the lake.
And, you see these on the edge of pavement a lot, so that if you have an asphalt driveway, you'll end up with a 2-foot infiltration strip of stone, so that water comes off the asphalt and then goes into the stone and dissipates and gets into the ground. So I just want to make sure that if we need to adjust the language or whatever it is, that those items, when they're being used that way, are not being counted as impervious coverage, because those are important features on a property that actually infiltrate the water, not do the
That was
opposite.
one of the things I was thinking, that maybe we should just add to the regulations that, when clean stone or clean gravel that's being used for drainage, water filtration, and it's uncompacted, shall be considered a pervious service, not impervious.
Well, I think the problem with the wetlands was facing, and I understand where their concern is you, on the lake, you have, runoff, and people wanna build as much as they can, so they're coming up with these LID type measures to get patios and kinda use their space the best they can, when ultimately the whole lot is covered in something, right? And then they don't maintain it. Is it really pervious, or maybe it's a pervious paver, but it doesn't, so cover all of the stormwater. So I think what I would like to see, and I think maybe we have it, is not necessarily the change in impervious, but when we talk about low impact development, to make sure that it's an engineered, if they wanna use that to if they're cutting close on their impervious coverage, right? Some big lots, doesn't matter, it's all grass, right? But if you're cutting it close, it needs to be an engineered low-impact development technique that says, yes, in fact, this is sized appropriate, it's built appropriate, because even with like a rain garden, right? If you don't have the right soils, 6 feet deep, it's not gonna do what it's gonna do. It can't be just a garden with soil. It has to have gravel, stone, gravel, and sand, and certain types of plants, and it has to do that thing. So it has to be engineered. So I think, and then, as we approve these low-impact development, we need to make sure that they're maintained and they're providing like a maintenance schedule or something to us. So I don't think it's a lot to ask for these lots, especially around the lake, who are basically building out their site, that they want us to approve these low impact, to have them engineered, and to promise they're gonna send a maintenance, yearly maintenance. We've looked at them, it's okay, we've updated it, we've done this or that. And I think that's where the rub is, and I was a little, I don't really know what the word is, but I remember when low impact development was starting, right? And we went through all of this training, we did all of these facilities, because the alternative was put it in a pipe and dump it into the water courses, and that wasn't working either. So, I don't wanna throw the baby out with the water and say no low impact development because people are taking advantage of it. But how can we make sure that what they're doing is the right thing? And if it's not engineered, well, sure, you can still put it there, but it doesn't count towards your impervious coverage. So I don't know if, I haven't really dug through the regulations, but if you had if you think the regulations already do that, then I think it's a matter of enforcement and just interpretation by the commission to make sure that they're doing that consistently and requiring that consistently. But if you don't think the regulations do that, then, what changes can we make to do that?
So they do call for fully engineered designs, or like you said, you could have it, but it doesn't buy you the extra 5%. Where we fall short is the maintenance schedule, so I think that's really what should be
Yeah, and that's
addressed
a
in the
big thing.
regulations.
We've had that issue in several other locations, and
Right.
And I think when the Wetlands Commission reviews it and they issue a permit and they make a report to the Planning and Zoning Commission, that report should be clear that they're recommending the Planning and Zoning Commission condition it upon regular maintenance, because it's part of the zoning regulation that we could do that and we can follow that recommendation.
Yeah. So, yeah, okay. We'll look at that.
Yeah, so that's, okay, that's good. No, this is why we had this conversation, so that we can get a little bit of guidance in terms of, so what we'll do now is we'll dig through those regs, we'll look at the Highland Lake District, because I think that's a key component of it, and then the LID regulation as well, and just make sure that all those pieces add up to that
Right.
puzzle, including the definition. So we'll do that. I'll come back to you with a little bit of an analysis on that, probably not at your next meeting, maybe at the following.
no, I think that sounds
So
fair.
the ones that are purely used as landscaping, we don't worry about that because it doesn't count for impervious surfaces. Impervious surfaces. But you were talking before about the stones and walkways. But they would have to be, those stones would have to be engineered because it's in a walkway, because it gets walked on and gets compacted.
Right, and I think that's exactly the key.
Unless they
Yes.
weren't gonna use those as a credit for the pervious surfaces.
Right.
But if it's just aesthetics, not gonna be part of their calculation, then it goes in through as impervious, then that's okay.
I think that's fine, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, to Rista's point, if we have an engineered plan that comes in, I mean, there's driveway systems out there where they do that cribbing, that plastic cribbing, and then they fill it with gravel. Well, those essentially stay pervious because the gravel never gets compacted because
Right.
the cribbing takes
Cribbing,
all
it
the weight.
takes the weight,
Right,
yeah.
so,
The
if somebody
last-
comes in and says, we're gonna do that, then that goes into the calculation.
So the
but-
last meetings we had, the engineers from Haley Ward were here, and they were talking about a new updated
Yeah, 2022.
engineering for
Yes,
pervious surfaces. So we need to make sure that, has that been approved yet, which I don't think we know. But if it does get approved, then we need to reflect that in our regulations.
I think the stormwater guidelines definitely got approved, the updated DEP stormwater
And I
guidelines.
think the regulations list it and say, and as updated
I
or
think they
something.
do, yeah,
Okay.
so.
But to that point, some of these bigger lots, you might see an engineered plan where they're using LID to treat stormwater, right? And that's great, we want that, but they're bigger lots and the impervious coverage doesn't really come into play because they're well exceeding the regulations. But when you try to use LID to manage stormwater, so you can build a bigger house, so you can, that's where that starts to get a little tricky.
Because there's that bonus that's built in, that 5% bonus, I think it is, which, yeah, so we'll do a bit of an analysis and look at all that.
Good.
Okay,
Excellent.
okay,
Thank
good, thank you.
That's good. Okay.
Somebody's tackled.
Yep. Yes, glad to see it. It's being tackled. Other business, discussion parking lot at 3 Meadow Street, property ID 110-095-009A, applicant Town of Winchester. That had been discussed before, and I don't know if you had any more information on the brownfield study or anything?
Yeah, we're
We'll
gonna
hand it
give-
right over to Rista.
That's right.
That made it easy for you?
Yep.
So, the NHCOG applied for a brownfield grant for the former Sun Chief building which is about a 9-acre lot between John and Meadow Street. And when we were talking to the property owner to do some assessment and planning work, we ended up talking to the town and found that a previous application for assessment on the Meadow Street parking lot that we all are talking about was denied. And they have reason to believe that there is some level of contamination, but not sure what level of contamination. So when we applied for the grant, we said, hey, listen, we want to, find a adaptive reuse for this brownfield site here, but we want to make sure that we have enough parking in the neighborhood for all of the brownfield redevelopment. So DECD approved a $200,000 assessment-only grant for both properties. Most of the assessment work will be focused on the former Sunchief development property because it's bigger and it has potential for redevelopment and tax growth.
Yes.
But we're going to bid it, both sites together, to do some necessary assessment on that lot and to come up with a conceptual design so that we can come up with a remedial action plan and know what that will cost. So what I mean by that is, if we have a conceptual design and we know we want lighting, we'll know generally where the utility corridors are going to be, and that we're gonna have to clean those different
those
than
because, yes.
in the parking lot. Do we want landscaped areas? Those have to be cleaned a little bit different. Or maybe there's one area of the site that's clean and another area that's dirty. Well, the dirty area, we might decide to pave and cap
Encapsulate.
and put the
Yeah,
landscaping
encapsulate it.
somewhere else. So that level, not, to that level is what I'm hoping to get out of the study. And once we put out the RFP, we see what comes back, we'll have a better idea. But I do think we'll be able to get some kind of
Good.
concept
Well, at
plans.
least there's movement going forward
Yep.
on it, which is good.
Yep, so, where that is right now, the grant was awarded, we've signed the financial assistance plan. Now we have the final closing documents, we need a letter of opinion from council. They have all of the documents, once I get that back, I'll give it to DCD, they'll finalize it, and then we'll be able to get the RFP approved. Then we can start the work. So realistically, we're looking at probably 2 to 3 months before, probably looking at 2 months before I can get the RFP out. And then probably another 2 months before we can start the work, so.
So it could technically get done this year then, before
It
winter.
could.
Yeah.
Well, my goal, my goal is to have the assessment work done, before winter time, so that
Yeah,
they.
at least
they-
the site work done.
Yeah, yep, so.
Excellent. That's good. Discussion, possible future application, heliports not associated with medical facilities.
So this was a request that came, and we talked a little bit about this, I think, 2 weeks ago. We did give you, I think, 5 or 6 example regulations from around the state, and we can grab more easily from around the country if this is something the commission wants to consider. I think a question had come up last time whether or not commercial property would make a difference. I did some research on that, and I think my understanding is as long as the operator of the helicopter is not a commercial operator, it really doesn't matter where the heliport is that he lands on. So if it's a private helicopter landing on a heliport that gets approved on a commercial lot, that doesn't mean the heliport is a commercial use, because it's a private helicopter. So, and I would say, read through the regs that I've given you so far, and then let's have a conversation.
Is
at a
there
future meeting.
somebody who wants this, is there possible,
Yeah,
So, these ones that you gave out,
yeah,
all really dealt with private.
right.
So, if we're not gonna be looking at a potential private, we're looking at a commercial, we need to know which way we're gonna be.
Well, I think we're looking at somebody who's got a private helicopter that wants to put it down on the property that they own.
On commercial property.
On commercial property, but it's privately
Okay,
held.
that's what
Yeah,
you're
so it
talking
would
about
not be a
right now,
public, it wouldn't be a publicly accessible helipad. It's just in the commercial zone, and I think one of those, at least one of those, maybe 2 of those regs allow them in any zone. Because it's ultimately the
Yeah, the
FAA
one,
that regulates the commercial side of
The
things.
first one I read allowed it in every zone, which, that's
well, I think it
something,
makes
yeah.
sense in a commercial zone, you know.
Right. And
Warning.
whether it's commercial or, if it's a commercial helipad, then it's FAA, then it's under their authority.
So, if it's a commercial helipad, I would think that means anybody can land their plane there,
Right,
right?
right.
But if, say Pepsi has their own plane and they use, even though it's a commercial business, they're using that helipad for their own plane, that would still be a private helipad, just used by a commercial user, that doesn't make it a commercial helipad. So it can't be leased or rented.
Because it's not
or-
open to the general public, it's
Right.
not open to, commercial, in my understanding of it, and I'm no FAA whiz, but my understanding of it is essentially a commercial helipad is looked at similarly to an airport.
Yeah.
In that the public can go there, jump on the vehicle, and fly away. And I think that's not the intention here with this, with this individual that's approached us. And again, those are regulated differently, those get regulated by the
Yeah.
Whereas a private helicopter pilot can really put his helicopter down wherever. And it's, the regulations on that are different. So this would, the request is to create a regulation which allows the commission to approve essentially a structure that goes on privately owned property for a private operator to land on. And I think, the difference between having a sort of a permanent structure versus, I can just put my helicopter down wherever I want, is that there's an expectation that there's gonna be some regularity of flights in and out of this thing. And
Such as
so that's why,
it'll be a paved area or a concrete
Right, it'd be
pad
paved or
something,
concrete, right, and it
with a
would-
possibly a windsock or something to
Yep,
that effect.
yep,
Not necessarily a building, but,
right.
unless they're planning on storing it there.
Right. And I think the bigger thing from a standpoint of neighbors is there's gonna be some regularity. So you wanna take a look at how close is the, or what's the distance between the nearest house? What's the distance between the nearest
Most of
commercial
these
building and all
regulations
that
have
kind
some
of
pretty
stuff?
stiff,
They do.
Yeah,
Wide
yeah, I mean, that,
boundaries.
the one from, Adam, we were talking
500
20 acre
feet.
property and quite some distances from adjoining properties and residences and things like that.
Do you have one of these that you recommend, or a part of ones that you recommend?
The East Haddam one is relatively recent, and I remember when they were writing that there, because I worked in a community next to it, and so I know the planner there pretty well, Jim Ventris, and I think that's a decent reg. I think the other one that was halfway decent was, or I should say that I liked, was, I think West Hartford has one that I thought was pretty thorough. Yeah, I thought the West Hartford one was pretty
Yeah,
thorough.
West
So-
Hartford gets into it pretty
West
heavily.
Hartford has a good
yeah.
one too.
So I would say, take some time
Yeah, we'll have to
and read through
peruse
those,
them
and
some
if you want, we can pull more for you to take a look at, but I think that's a pretty good
No,
sampling.
I think it's a great sampling myself, though. Gives us something to look at and think about, so.
Perfect. We'll keep it on the agenda, we can talk about it again at the next meeting.
One other thing, and George had asked me to bring it up, any activity with Mountaintop on the Route 800 property?
Not yet, but we are We are compiling a list of the existing excavation outfits in town, making sure that they're all up to stuff with their
There's been a lot of activity there with
permits.
equipment being parked there recently.
Yeah, well aware of that.
Okay.
We've been in contact with them about that specifically. And, the thought process was, well, we're gonna handle it all with our renewal, but then the renewal hit a hiccup and they didn't have the survey done. So we'll continue to work with them to get them up.
Question I had too, and I mean, it's more, not so much for us, but wetlands is the old Union Pin property up at the lake where they're clearing that off and
Yep.
there's no silt fence or sedimentation, erosion controls or anything.
No, so Jeremy and I
In there.
went to visit them last Thursday, just to get an idea of what the expected work was there. And right now, it's really just, he was looking to clear some of the trees and the brush to have overflow parking and boat storage over there. He doesn't have a fully formulated plan whether he wants to develop that side or the other side or vice
But I mean,
versa.
they're disturbing soil.
Not
Well,
yet.
they're not, yeah,
Well,
not yet. They're leaving
some.
the stumps as we
Yeah.
requested. His original plan was to just drop some of the trees in one of the old foundations, and we said, we don't like that too much. You're gonna
Yeah.
pull those out of there. So
I know there was an
we have met
original,
with them on
original
site.
plan to try to burn it on the property, but they can't get permits to burn on commercial
Don't disparage it. That was not their plan. That was one of my crazy ideas.
Okay.
I ran it by the fire marshal,
No.
and he said, "Nope." I said, "All right, forget it. Never mind."
It was run by me as burning official also, so
Right.
that's why I'm aware of it.
Yeah, that wasn't Eric's idea. That was one of mine.
Okay.
So.
We did tell him that before he parks any boats over there, he needs to come to you and get a site plan approval
Yeah.
for that too. So
Yeah.
he's aware of that.
Okay. That's it. Item 8, approval of minutes. First one,
Can I have a couple things?
sure, go ahead.
So, accessory apartments, like accessory dwelling units. We believe we might have opted out of that when the state passed that bill. And did we actually, and was the proper paperwork filed for us to have opted out of it? And that would have been probably like 22.
Would have been sometime between October of 21 and October of 22 that it would have been done.
Yeah, because I was part of PA
That
21, 29.
That one-year period, but
And it had to be done within a certain amount of time.
it
Yeah,
had that
and a
one-year
deadline
window
on it.
that we could have opted out, and I think, I remember we had a lot of discussion of it at the time. I thought we decided to opt out, but I'm not positive.
We'll have to review and see where that landed.
But,
And
I'd
there
like to know, did we opt out? And if we did it get filed with the state?
right, in which case we didn't.
If it didn't, then we didn't opt out, and
Right.
we need to update
Update
some
our zoning.
regulations and add some things to our regulations.
Yeah, and there was a process to that too, if I recall. The commission had to approve it, and then the Board of Selectmen had to sanction your approval on that opt-out,
I
and then it had to go to
think
the
so.
state, so, yeah.
I believe so, yes.
All right, and then, one other thing. I was at the Connecticut Bar Association
Seminar
seminar,
Saturday.
and it was brought up in there by one of the lawyers that we need to have regulations established in our planning and zoning where we can take, what's the name of it now?
The developer for the affordable housing.
Affordable housing, to take those plans and have them reviewed, because the review process on the affordable housing has to be done in certain ways, and if we were to reject it, we have to reject it or have any corrections, have to be done in a certain way. And she said if we didn't have that regulation, ability to send that to an outside firm to have it and back charge it to the developer,
Yes.
that we need to get that in.
That was one of the things that
They
the lawyer,
stressed that.
stressed that repeatedly, that the town should have that in their regulations.
Yeah.
And,
Just so that you
And that's for
can back
any,
charge.
that's for any application, not just
Yeah.
affordable housing.
yeah,
Yeah, there should be something in there. If there isn't, we'll.
and that was
That
in,
kind of should be for anything we have.
Anything, because
Right.
you always, you should always give yourself the option of having a third-party review and having
Right,
the
and
applicant
that's
pay for it.
something we
Yeah.
may want to
Yeah.
double check with
So-
our regulations. 'Cause that
Don't we
would-
have that, don't we have that in our regulations about outside consultants?
We do, but I'd like to just review it to make sure that it checks all the boxes
Right.
for
And
this,
this
if the
is
lawyers
in,
are speaking specifically about it.
So this is in Public Act 2129, and on this page here, there's some language about it.
I remember when the golf course was coming to town, that the town decided to have outside consultants for wetlands and zoning.
Wetlands does it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the applicant pays?
Yep. Yeah, it's at their cost.
But this has to be that whole review process is very specific for affordable
For the
housing.
affordable housing.
8-30 Gs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a site plan review, essentially is what it is. I mean, most towns hold a public hearing, but at the end of the day, it's a site plan.
It has to be safety and all that
Yeah,
stuff, and it
yeah.
has to be done in a certain way.
Yeah, because they cited several cases where, like, they talk about fire department access or traffic and off-site traffic, and it didn't stand up in court.
Have you ever had an 8-30
Didn't
G
you?
application come through? An 8-30 G application in town?
No, not that I remember since I've been on the board, no. Anybody else? Anything else?
Yeah, I'm done.
Before we- Okay.
I'd say, that's it. One other thing I noticed is, so we have a solar farm going in on,
Spencer.
Spencer?
yeah, on top of the hill.
Yep.
And then they cleared land next door, right?
Yep.
And I was around then, but you mentioned how did that come to be and how did it get approved? And do we want to be involved, more involved, or should there be?
Well, Jeff, he's been involved in it from the beginning.
Okay.
We're not involved.
We are,
Is
basically,
the
yeah, we
answer.
can't be.
This is a siting council approval. There's a time when the town can offer comment. I don't know if that comment is really listened to, but we can offer it, and the siting council makes their decision, and that's that.
But the last time, the Platte Hill project,
The
there's
Platte
money
Hill.
coming to the sewer and water department from that project because of the town's comment and the legal action that was taken at that time.
Yeah, the Platte Hill project, both fire departments and a lot of the town departments input a lot of information, and it was accepted by the siting council.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
The one that's already been approved on top of the hill, beyond the clear cutting, that supposedly came to the town last October, somewhere in that area. No one from town commented on it. Nothing was done with it at all.
So,
Somehow New London is getting the energy credits from it.
yeah.
You know, that's what I
I mean, the
wrote in
abutters
newspaper articles.
commented,
Right.
but
Nothing
the
from the
town
town.
of Winchester did not comment.
The site you're talking about that's been clear cut is for grazing for a farm, which they've gotten a farming permit, license permit through the town. So far, everything is legal there.
Yep. Now, the one further up the hill, they came in and paid for their building permits.
They did, okay.
So that's
I
going to be
figured that was
happening.
gonna go because
Yep.
all the telephone poles are up.
Yeah,
Those have been put in this spring during the winter.
in advance. Yeah,
Yes.
to carry the new load.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I have been in contact with them even again when the woman came in to pay the permit fee, and reminded them that the project manager said that they were not willing to come to a meeting, because I wanted them to come at least put on their presentation. But he was going to submit an email with links to all the information and all the site plan and this and that I was gonna share with all the commissioners. That communication has not come yet. If and when it does, I'll forward it on for everyone's review, or we could even,
Right.
put a show on here for you, however you wanna go about it.
Yeah, because the one on Platte Hill, I know Wetlands had a lot of input into it, and stuff with the sediment pond and erosion controls
Yeah.
and different things up there.
Yeah, somehow we missed the boat on
Yeah,
these
and
others.
last meeting, our Representative Jay Case was listening to the discussion we had and texted me and called me because we had discussion. There was a bill submitted to the legislature this year, or it was to the committee, to give local towns more input into the solar farms and windmills. And it, basically the governor vetoed it. He would not give any more power to local governments than take it from the siting council. That was the comment.
Yeah, there's a lot, so I'm glad that Jay mentioned that to you, because we had a legislative breakfast.
Yep.
And, the legislator in Torrington, Representative Canino,
Yeah.
same thing, because Torrington's
Yes,
faced
yep.
with it. But there is also some legislation that was raised, I don't know if it's going anywhere, about the way that they're taxed, because essentially towns aren't receiving any personal property on them because they're considered solar, and, if you think about a, roof-mounted solar panel, there's some, like, weird tax legislation too. So there might be some movement in that realm when it comes to solar panels. But Winstead's not alone in wanting more siting, because they're taking these properties basically off the tax rolls, off of development property, and the benefits of the energy being generated aren't supporting the towns that they're in.
No, like,
And there's no tax revenue because of the way the tax laws are, so there's a lot of towns that are opposed and pushing that, so, hopefully, maybe not this session, but one of these sessions, they get something passed.
Is there a way we can sort of move it to an area where it's more sightly, where we prefer it to be versus anywhere?
No, siting council is kind of like with cell towers, right? They
Yeah.
do their thing, they'll listen to you, they'll take your opinions.
siting
on that.
council does everything. Connecticut DEP deals with the wetlands.
It would override.
Erosion controls,
It
and
overrides all
nothing we can do.
local zoning.
They
Yeah.
override all local authority.
But they gave the Platte Hill.
Yeah, Platte Hill, they
a
were
lot of
very good.
problems.
Yep.
They had issues with
Yep.
turtles,
Yes.
and they had all kinds of things they had to
studies that were done.
rechange it and
Yes,
stuff,
yeah.
because they had a lot of issues up there.
Yeah, to the point where the developer that bought the property and developed that property gave a large chunk of land to the
Yeah.
land trust. Because all the wetlands, anything with vernal pools, anything where the turtles were, was all given to the land trust. Up there, so, that was, and the town manager at the time negotiated a very good energy credits and, to the town, so, for that.
No ridge line protection or anything could stop.
Nothing,
Well, that's,
Override all.
yeah.
Well, it gets, I mean, it's not, yeah, I mean, your local regs get overridden, but if, there's ridgeline protection laws at the state level that, the DEP would be involved in the regulating.
but if it came forth as a strictly a solar panel business, I think the ridgeline protection might stand up.
Right.
But if it came through as something else, I think the ridgeline protection disappeared.
Anything else, anyone? No. Down to approval of minutes, February 24th, 2026, regular meeting minutes. Need a motion?
Move to approve February 24th, regular meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Next will be approval of minutes for March 10th, 2025, regular meeting minutes. Need a motion on those also.
I move to approve the March 10th, 2025 regular meeting minutes.
Second? I'll second them. All in favor?
I abstain.
Abstain.
Unanimous.
You weren't here.
Oh, I
You
abstain.
weren't
Yeah.
here.
You were there, Scott was here, he can vote on those.
Oh, that's right.
For a second? Yeah, no, you can just vote.
I wasn't here, I
Yeah.
can't vote yet.
Okay.
I'm good with them.
You had 3 abstentions?
Oh, I actually have a
Yeah.
comment about that. I
don't know
know, but it's not a big deal, we can still vote. For the minutes, who do I send the email to if I'm not gonna be here? Is that Shane Wynot?
Yeah, that's a good place to start.
Okay, so I did that,
Okay.
but I was put down as not excused, so I didn't know if I had sent the email to the right place or not.
Oh, all right.
Not even to Joff or both. Send
You
them
can
both.
include me too.
I'll do that.
Include
Yeah.
both.
I'll just,
Then
the
you
more
know
the merrier.
some-
Yeah, why not? One of us are.
Why not?
One more.
Hey, maybe someone will remember.
All right.
Just to back up though, I need to make sure
For
if
the,
that was a
for
valid.
the minutes,
motion.
maybe you wanna appoint Scott
Yeah.
instead of me. So
Okay,
he'll vote.
Rista's, I'm gonna see Scott now to vote on the motion for the March 10th meeting. All in favor? 3. Everybody else will say, got that, Lauren? Nothing, trying to confuse you tonight, so. Okay. Any communications? Got another hour. No?
You talk about whatever you like, I
I'll
guess.
take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. That's it.
You're almost
That's
as good
record
as the
time.
selectmen.
Huh?
You're almost as good as the selectmen. Oh, you were better.
The selectmen?
They would,
Could they do a meeting in an hour?
they did an hour and a half last one,
We did an hour and 4 minutes. How's that? Huh? That's with all the good help we've got.